Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Inside Guns with your host, me, the Yankee Marshal. Tonight, I want to talk about a subject that, as they often do, the subjects on this show, came up during a live chat the other night. Someone in my live chat asked me if I think it's a good idea to carry a less than lethal option with your carry gun. And there are all kinds of different types of less than lethal. You know, one of the things people think of all the time is tasers. But what they asked specifically about was pepper spray, bear spray, mace. And do I think it's a good idea to carry that along with a carry gun, to have kind of an intermediate option there, an intermediary option, I guess you would say. Well, today I want to answer that question, but I don't want to answer it with my opinion, because my opinion of it is I don't really see a problem with it, to be honest. I like options, and the more options you can have, the better. But sometimes I feel like I should present the other side of things, especially if it's something like this, where people would need to consider the possibilities. And just because I agree with something doesn't make it right, and just because I disagree with something doesn't make it wrong. So I want to present my answer today from a position that a lot of people take with this topic that I don't particularly agree with, but I think is sound. It does have some validity to it. So I'm going to present it as if it's my opinion, even though I want to say up front, it is not. Some people have problems understanding when you're playing devil's advocate, but I'm going to do that for this question. And the point that a lot of people have, which I'm going to make tonight about less than lethal options with a carry gun, is they can actually put you in some bad situations. They can make you make decisions that you wouldn't normally make if you were just carrying a gun. Let's say you're out somewhere, some guy on the street is getting mouthy with you, they're screaming at you, they're calling you names, they're doing all kinds of stuff, they're trying to provoke you. Well, a lot of us, when we're carrying, we know we have an additional responsibility, simply because we have deadly force at our fingertips. So we make the decision like, I'm just going to walk away. Or we avoid the situation. If we see some ruffians in the street ahead of us, we'll cross the street. We don't let our manhood or our pride make the decision for us. We know, hey, we don't want to get involved in any situations because we have the ability to end that person quite easily. So we make better decisions. And even if someone does get in our face, we find it easier to walk away. But if we have something like mace on us, then it might be a different story. Because let's face it, the line where you would be justified in shooting someone is quite a bit, higher. The standard is quite a bit higher than it is for the same line you'd be justified tasing someone or spraying them with mace. There's a huge gap between those two justifiable circumstances. And if you didn't have that mediary option there, the mace, you might decide to move on more quickly. Whereas if you have the mace on you, you might be like, well, it probably won't get to deadly force because I have something that I can use at a lower standard, mace or a taser or something. So you might feel safe in walking down that side of the street. Or you might feel safe in not walking away when someone's getting in your face. You might feel like I can argue with you because I'll just end up macing you and that'll be the end of it. But here's the thing, that might not be the end of it. The fact that these methods are less than lethal means you're probably not going to seriously harm that person. And that means they might not stop. In fact, it might accelerate their actions. It might escalate the situation. And they might now be justified in feeling at risk for their life. Even if they were just yelling at you before, now you've maced them. You've tried to incapacitate them. If they have a gun, they might shoot you. Or at very least, they might physically attack you in defense of their own well-being. And that case could be made in court very easily. So then if you decide to shoot afterwards, if it escalates to the point where you have to shoot, it's not your problem. They attack you, or it's not your actions that cause it to escalate further, but still they attack you. You defend yourself with your firearm. A lot of people, especially people that are watching from the sidelines, are going to be like, hey, that one guy was just yelling at him and he maced him. And then the guy tried to defend himself and he shot him. That's going to look to a jury like you escalated the situation. Now, I'm not saying everyone who's going to carry mace is going to like just decide I'm going to get involved in this fight, but it is something that a lot of people say you should factor in. And you should know your own temperament and how you would behave in a situation. So a lot of people would say, if you're making the right decisions, avoiding the confrontation, avoiding situations where you might find yourself in trouble, you don't need the less than lethal. It doesn't serve a purpose. So why would you even need to have it? And it might be something that aggravates the situation and escalates the situation to where you are in fear for your life, but it's going to hurt you in court and make it look like you escalated the situation. So it could be a bad decision depending on who you are and how you react to situations. So be aware of that if you choose to carry something less than lethal. Now, I think it's great in a car because if your car is mobbed, you can easily mace people through the window if people are trying to get your door open or something. So it's a good option to have. And like I said, I don't really see a problem with mace, period. I hope if you're going to make good decisions, you're going to make good decisions. But there is that line of thinking that mace might make you make a decision you wouldn't have made if you didn't have it. And it might come across to bystanders or a jury that you escalated a situation that you normally would have avoided. So, and also, maybe if you didn't have the mace, if you both just screamed at each other and then he poked you in the chest and you poked him in the chest, that might be the end of it. But if he's screaming in your face and then he physically touches you and you mace him, well, then he might fight you. And like I say, a situation that would have ended with a couple of pokes now ends with a gunshot, and you might end up in prison because of that. So that's what I want people to consider. Know your own temperament, know the possible situations and how they might look to other people and how they might play out. And then you make your own decision whether you want to carry something other than your firearm, with your firearm, or just your firearm, and avoid every situation you possibly can that might require you to use it. All right, everybody, I want to move on here with our next segment. And in this segment, I want to discuss something that happened a long time ago. Recently, I have said to a couple of people who asked about Taurus revolvers, I'm like, they're great revolvers. I like them. I even said it on Instagram recently when someone asked me about a Taurus 605. I said in the live chats and on Instagram that a Taurus saved my life possibly in Birmingham, Alabama a long time ago. In fact, I made a video about it, how a Taurus saved my bacon in Birmingham, Alabama. And some people asked me, wow, I haven't heard that story. Would you share it with us here again? Well, I'm not going to share it again because I'm getting old. I don't know if I even remember all of it, to be honest. But I do have it on tape because, like I said, I shared it almost 10 years ago on my YouTube channel. So I'm going to replay that for you now. I got a video request today to make a specific video from a fellow YouTuber, Lelit41 or Lelit41. It's Lelit 41. He sent me an email saying he'd seen that I'd done video requests in the past, and I do like to do video requests. If you have video requests, I do like to get to them if I can, and if it's something I have the ability to do. So I thought I would do the one he requested. He sent me an email stating that he had seen that I had mentioned once before that I've had to pull my weapon once in my civilian life in self-defense, and he kind of wanted to know what was it like, how did I react, what was the adrenaline like, because he said there's a lot of people on YouTube that show a lot of tactical stuff, but they never really relate real-world experiences. So, you know, my real-world experience is very limited, but I can give you the one time that I did actually have to pull a weapon on an attacker. Now, this is not defending property. We used to, you know, when I was a younger kid, we used to go out with my grandfather with a shotgun, chase off trespassers and poachers all the time. This is different. This is, you're in a situation where you're being attacked by someone and you have to pull a weapon to defend yourself under fear of your life. I was in Birmingham, Alabama many years ago. I was with a friend and we were going to some bars downtown Birmingham. And there's a place where you get right off the interstate and you go into downtown Birmingham, right there as you first get into the city, coming from Huntsville, Alabama. And we pulled off the interstate, and as you go off the ramp, you go to an underpass, and you stop at a stoplight. Well, we came down the interstate, we pulled up to, there was another car at the stoplight. The light was green, but the car wasn't going. I pulled up behind him, I honked my horn lightly, you know, like, okay, light's green, go. Well, about that time, light turns yellow. But as soon as I pull up behind him, another car sitting off to the side on the underpass pulls up and pulls up close enough to tap our bumper. And we are pinned between the back car and the front car. At that time, people get out of both the front car and the car behind us, and they start coming around to the passenger side and the driver's side door. Right away, I knew this wasn't a good thing, and I didn't feel like I could power my way out because these were big, heavy cars, and I was in actually a little Honda CRX at the time. And kind of knew this was going to not go well. So at the time, I always carried a Taurus 357 Magnum revolver. It was a 4-inch stainless gun. I believe it was a 605. And I kept it tucked next to the seat when I drove. This is right after I had just come off of duty as a law enforcement officer. I had just quit that job not long before this happened. So I was still carrying most of the time. Now I've been carrying, like I say, I've had a gun on me in one way or another, either in on duty or off duty, legally carrying a gun for about 20 years. I've been concealed carrying for about 7 years now, 6 or 7 years now. But these people came to the door, kind of started coming around the doors, and I noticed that when the one guy got out of the front, one of them had a chain in his hand and one of them had a ball bat. So I immediately went into, okay, this is not good. I pulled the gun out from between the seats, rolled my window the rest of the way up. My window was down in Alabama. This is back when you had crank windows. So I rolled the window the rest of the way up, and as he came over to the window, he actually tapped on my hood of my car with the bat and told me to roll the window down. And at that time, I pointed my gun out the window at him. And I'm not a person who usually uses racial slurs or anything like that, but I did use a racial slur. I said, I will shoot your racial slur ass right through this windshield. And as soon as he saw the gun, actually the guy on the other side saw the gun first and freaked out and yelled, he's got a gun, and took off running. He didn't even get in one of the cars, he just took off running. As soon as the other guys realized that and heard it, they all ran, jumped in their cars. The car behind us took off. The guy in front of us jumped in his car and took off. The car stalled as it took off into the intersection. It just died dead. He jumped out and ran. My nerves were really up. I was really amped at this time. So I did something really stupid. I got out of the car. I got out of the car with the gun and walked into the intersection. Looking to see where he ran to, was there anyone still around. I should have just stayed where I was at. Now this was before cell phones, so I couldn't call for anyone from the car. But I could have backed the car away now, which is what I should have done. I should have backed the car away, driven to safety, and driven to a police station. But I didn't. I got out of the car. Luckily, I had the good sense to tuck the gun back into my pants as I noticed there was no one else around. Because right as I did that, a state trooper pulled off the interstate on the other side and was coming down to the intersection and saw me standing there and flashed his lights. And I waved him down, and he stopped, and I gave him the story. Well, he was not surprised. Apparently that's something that happened in Birmingham all the time at the time. He asked me what they looked like, where they went. I told him this is the car he was driving, blah, blah, blah. Took a statement. He sent us on our way. We went out and did our thing that evening, was heading back to Alabama. We went back to Alabama. I got a call the next morning from the police saying that they've caught, I think it was 4 of the 5 guys that were involved. I think it was 5 guys total that were involved. And they said that they caught them because the lead driver was actually, the car he was driving that stalled was his mother's car that he'd stolen from his mother, and she had reported stolen. And that's how they caught them. But they said, well, they may need me to come to court, they may need me to testify, blah, blah, blah. I said, not a problem, I'll make the trip, it's only a couple hours. Never had to. I think they got them on other charges also. I think they were involved in a string of things, so I never ended up having to come testify. But that's the one time I've ever had to pull my weapon in self-defense in civilian life. It wasn't that dramatic, and I never got to do any, fancy rolls or trick shots or anything. Never even got to fire the gun. I just drew it, and the sight of the gun alone was enough to end the situation. So that was it. That was pretty simple. The adrenaline was pretty high at the time. It seems like everything is just going in slow motion. You feel like you're just really trapped in a bubble of things that are happening around you, and you don't really have a perception of how long things are taking or what's really even happening. It was pretty quick, but it seemed like it took a lot longer to me. It was probably, the whole encounter overall probably lasted between 30 and 45 seconds from the time they got out of their car to the time they ran. But to me it seemed like a lot longer. And even though I had been trained in the military and with law enforcement to deal with situations like that, it was still very stressful. My adrenaline still pumped very high, and I was really wound up for the rest of the night, to be honest. It took me a day or so to really come down from that. It takes a long time for the adrenaline levels to drop in your blood sometimes. But like I say, that's my story. It's nothing real exciting. It's nothing real tactical. It's no shots fired. Just a simple story. All right, there you have it. I'm sorry about the poor quality. I didn't have a good setup back then. Not that I have a good setup now or know how to use it, but back then I especially didn't have a good setup. And you might have noticed I was 50 pounds heavier then than I am now. And before anyone congratulates me on the weight loss, in fact, I might have been 60 pounds heavier, it isn't so much that I've been successful in losing weight as it is I have just started deteriorating with age. So save the kudos. But there you go. That's the story that everybody asked for, how a Taurus saved my bacon in Birmingham, Alabama. All right, everybody, I want to end the show today, as usual, with our viewer EDC of the day. And today we have Joe B. And he wanted to show us his carry rig because he feels he carries a gun that a lot of people don't carry. He carries the Walther P99AS, and that AS stands for anti-stress. And before people get on me and say it's pronounced Walter, you know, we won the fucking war. We get to decide how the alphabet is pronounced. It is Walther P99AS. And he's carrying it in his crossbreed inside the waistband holster, which he raves about. Now, I agree with him. This gun is not carried by a lot of people. And I also agree with him that it's a great gun. I love this gun. If you're not familiar with this gun, you should look into them. If you're someone who wants to carry a striker-fired gun, but you're not really sure you're comfortable with the way striker-fireds work, you know, how they're like almost always cocked and locked, you know what I mean? I didn't say that very well, but you know what I mean. This gun is actually as close as you can get for all intents and purposes, or intensive purposes, as some people say. For all intents and purposes, this gun is a double action, single action, striker fired gun with a decocker. So, you rack around, you decock it, you put it in your holster. It's now double action, basically. Has a much longer, heavier pull on the first shot. So it's a great gun, and I recommend it to anyone. So I'm actually very happy to show you this gun because I agree with the gun he chose to carry, thinking it's an awesome gun. Now, I will say one thing here. I wasn't sure at first how he was carrying it. I mean, when I saw this picture, it came in during the live chat, and I was like, I can't see how this guy's carrying it. First, I was like, is he carrying cross-draw appendix or something? I mean, left-handed cross-draw appendix? What's going on here? Is he in a mirror? I couldn't figure it out. But then I realized what I thought was the flat front of his pants is actually the flat back of his pants because he's suffering from, once again, the no-ass syndrome. But, I mean, I guess it's better to have a flat back of your pants than it is the flat front of your pants, to be honest, though. But what I thought were obliques, and one of the reasons I thought this was the front, turns out they're not obliques. Those are love handles. Or as his wife calls them, the reason she won't have sex with him with the lights on anymore. Sure, that's what she calls them. And I'm assuming that he has a wife. He might be a loner for all I know. He might be a sad sack. But let's just say his sexual partner. That sounds worse. I just don't like that at all. But all that aside, now that we're getting off topic here, I just wanted to say that is our viewer EDC of the day. That is a great gun, and he loves that holster, so I'll give him that. So there's our viewer EDC of the day, Joe B. with his Walther P99AS. All right, everybody, that's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you come back tomorrow. Until then, I just want to sign off, as usual, by saying, as far as the state of the world today is concerned, it is what it is. It ain't that bad, but it is what it is. There's things that could be better. But if we, as a community, continue to ignore the fearmongers and the profiteers and the people who want to make us angry so that they can manipulate us and profit off of us, if we continue to ignore those people and do the things we know we need to do, what things will be in the future, especially for those of us in the gun community, is better.